I couldn't believe this was happening. My wolf was howling in agony as I paced back and forth in Gabriel's living room, pondering what to do next. Should I stay here to protect my pack, or risk my life to follow my mate and find the answers? Chapter 30. I couldn't believe this was happening. My wolf's agonized howls were difficult to drown out as I paced back and forth, deep in thought about what exactly I was supposed to do now. We were back in Gabriel's house in his living room, and Eli was sitting on the couch solemnly watching my fevered movements. I couldn't help the frustrated groan that escaped my lips as I spun to face the beta, and Gabriel honestly believed there was no other way. Eli shook his head, slowly and regretfully. He was dead, set on going after Cain. Said he had some new information, and it was the only option. It asked him different variations of the same question, as if I expected El's answer to change, but it hadn't. My mind was going in circles amidst my wolf frustration, coming to the same conclusion over and over again. Whatever Raziel had contacted Gabriel about, it was significant, especially to make Gabriel drop everything and leave in the dead of night. Curiosity was gnawing at me, begging me to take off and go get answers from Raziel. Part of me wanted to do just that. I ran a hand through my tangled brown curls in yet another fit of aggravation. He didn't even tell me, I whispered, betrayal leaking into my tone. Again, he probably said the same thing 10 times, but Eli was being patient with me. Not that he had a choice. He knew you'd react like this, and there was still a lot of time. He gave Jack and me instructions on how to run the pack a few days. He made sure we were prepared, but he didn't even pack a bag. I clenched my fist tightly, not responding. There was nothing I could say that would bring Gabriel back. I would just have to sit and wait now. I couldn't do that. I couldn't just loaf around while my mate was putting his life on the line. What the hell are we supposed to do? I demanded of my wolf, who had subsided into quiet whimpering. Go after him. Go find our mate, she started. I was about to respond, but then I sensed a sudden hesitation from her. What's wrong? I pressed her, surprised she was hesitant about anything. It's just Luna. I feel it. I want our mate, but some part of me wants to protect the others. I don't know what to do. As she spoke, I sensed the true turmoil of her emotions. My wolf and I had gotten a new responsibility, and by instinct she wanted to act out our role as Luna, but we also wanted to run after our mate. We couldn't do both. We haven't learned anything about being Luna, and it won't matter if Gabriel dies. I responded after a moment, well aware of L's penetrating stare fixated on me. As I spoke, I realized that despite my wolf's instinct to protect the pack, the far greater urge was to run after Gabriel. My wolf would pushed me out of the door already if not for her sense of obligation. Why would he leave us before teaching us how to help the pack? Whatever Raziel told him must have been urgent, but there's still so much we don't know about Cain. Gabriel could walk into a trap. I mused, the thought horrifying. We can't wait if that's going to happen, was my wolf's reply, but I still sensed her conflict tie on. I know we're supposed to be Luna, and I know you have that instinct now. We both do, but we're of little to no use now with such lack of experience. And Eli and Jack are more than capable of handling the pack for a couple of days, especially if Gabriel is out distracting Cain. I was working through the reasoning as I spoke, and knew my words rang true. If I went after Gabriel, I would in some form be abandoning my post as Luna. But if I could save Gabriel's life, it would be worth it. This pack needed him as alpha. Besides, as his mate, I was supposed to stand by his side. Then again, what chance did I have against Cain? Our mate is the only one that can bring him down. Even we are not strong enough to fight Cain. We could find answers. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Go to Raziel. Learn what exactly is going on. My wolf didn't seem completely opposed to the idea, so I pressed on. Then we can decide from there whether we'll be of more use back here at the pack or helping Gabriel. I'm sure she knew I was saying a lot of that to appease her, and that I would go after Gabriel no matter what. but some of her tension eased. Skylar. It was then I realized that Eli had been trying to get my attention. I refocused on his face to see his brow furrowed, dark gaze studying me intently. What are you going to do? And something flashed in his eyes. I opened my mouth to give him a truthful response, but some instinct kicked in, telling me to lie. I was normally an honest person, but in this particular situation, an inner voice was telling me to fib. I always trusted these instincts, so I went with it. I will. Gabriel marked me as Luna. I don't know where he went. I guess it's best I stay here and help take care of the pack, I said quietly, trying to make my voice as sincere as possible. I absolutely loathed lying to him, but for some reason I didn't want him to know I was going after Gabriel. Probably because Gabriel commanded Eli, and possibly every other warrior in the pack, to stop you from going after him. My wolf's words struck home and I realized she was right. That's why Eli had followed me back and was watching me so intently he thought I would bolt. Of course Gabriel would have made sure I cowed and follow. He was overprotective of me. I met Ella's gaze squarely, hoping my regret didn't shine through. I'm going to learn to be Luna the hard way. I guess it's what Gabriel would want. Right. I attempted to look resigned to this decision. Eli nodded, slowly, seeming to accept my decision. I'll stay here and watch over you. That's what the Alpha wanted. I smiled half-heartedly and nodded as his words confirmed my suspicions. It would be difficult to sneak out with Eli hovering around the house, but I could do it. Raziel's residence had been a 10-hour drive, so to avoid traveling in darkness I'd have to wait until early the next morning to leave, as it was already afternoon today. I remembered the name of the city well enough. I knew I could find it again. Perhaps I was making a selfish decision, running after my mate and ignoring his wishes, leaving the pack behind. Some part of me did regret it, but for my sanity, I was doing the right thing. I had to follow Gabriel. I would chase him and Cain to the ends of the earth if I had to. I would be content with finding Raziel and obtaining as much information as possible. The rest of the day passed tortuously slowly. I mostly kept to Gabriel's room, constantly moving from the chair by the fire to his bed, and then to look out of the window again. I tried to read one of his books to pass the time, but to no avail. Gabriel constantly haunted my thoughts. I tried to contact him a few more times, but his mental barriers remained intact and I grew increasingly frustrated. All I wanted was to know that he was safe. When I went to mindlessly grab some sort of sustenance from the fridge, I noticed Eli was still lounging in the living room, talking to the big beefy blonde guy that had shown me the lay of the land. Vincent. I remembered. They were deep in conversation, so they paid me no mind as I returned to my room. I guessed Eli had thought that he was being kind by giving me a day to cope with Gabriel's absence before I began to act as Luna. After cramming the sandwich and apple down my throat despite my unsettled stomach, I moved to the window and shut the curtains. Sunset was not too far away now, and the last thing I wanted was some creepy vampire watching me. I wondered if anyone nearby, if Gabriel had gone after Cain. Surely the latter had more important things to do than leave me a note in the middle of the night. That didn't mean Cain hadn't left someone behind to watch me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I locked the window and the double doors after saying goodnight to Eli, who was going to sleep in a guest room. The beta gave me a searching, suspicious look that let me know it'd have to be awfully quiet when sneaking out in the morning. I was glad that he was going to sleep outside Gabriel's door. I planned to just stay awake to avoid having to set an alarm that would wake Eli from his slumber. Darkness arrived, and I was extra jumpy as I took a long, hot bath. It was eerily devoid of noise outside, but I didn't feel that any vampires were nearby. The hairs on the back of my neck weren't standing up and my wolf remained quietly agitated that we were so far away from Gabriel. After bathing, I removed everything from my traveling bag that I didn't think I would need. I planned to travel as light as possible, so I merely kept a few articles of clothing, some money that I was gratefully grabbed from my house at the last second, and my toothbrush inside. If everything went smoothly, I wouldn't be gone terribly long. I couldn't help but feel there was incredibly wishful thinking. I peeked bleary-eyed through the gap between the curtains, confirming that the sky was beginning to morph from a deep blue to a lighter one infused with pink. The sun was just about to break above the horizon, and I could not wait any longer. I opened the curtains the rest of the way, moving cautiously as to not cause too much noise. Eli was downstairs, but he still had enhanced hearing that would pick up anything too loud. Reaching out, I tentatively flipped the latch so the window was unlocked. Now I just had to be as silent as possible when opening it. It was grueling, but I slid the window up inch by inch until it was large enough for me to climb through. Glancing around, I determined that there wasn't a particularly sturdy tree nearby. I would have to jump. I may have been on the 3rd story, but my body could take it, although I would have preferred the less drastic method of climbing. I eased my body through the open window until I was sitting on the ledge with my legs off of the side, swinging towards the ground where I'd be landing. My bag was secured on my back. I glanced around the room one last time before shoving off of the side of the building. I landed fairly gracefully, bending my knees and touching my hands to the ground to absorb the impact. There was not a moment to waste. I took off towards the trees, using my enhanced speed so that the fringe of the forest approached at an alarming rate. Once I entered the trees, I prepared to shift, and that's when I heard it. A distant voice calling my name. Skylar. It was riddled with fury. Eli. He must have heard some sort of noise coming from my bedroom, or he'd been awake all along. Feeling a surge of adrenaline, I leapt forward, shifting in mid-air until I landed on the ground on 4 legs instead of 2. He would follow me, no doubt, but there was only so far Eli could go before he'd turn back. He wouldn't abandon the Black Mountains Pack Village to chase me. I whizzed through the trees, scenting the air and determining that Eli was in fact chasing me. As a beta, he was probably faster than I, but newfound strength pumped through my limbs and I tore through the woods faster than ever before. It had to be Gabriel's essence that was giving me this incredible speed. It'd never run like this before and I reveled in it. Branches tore my thick coat, but I paid them no mind. Letting the wind rush through my fur as I kept up the breakneck pace. So this was one of the perks of being Luna. With an alpha of angel bloodline. Too, my wolf said, pride emanating from her voice. It only took 15 minutes. Maybe a bit more. For Eli to stop chasing me. Perhaps he realized I was running just as fast as he was. Or maybe he felt guilty leaving the pack he was in charge of. Either way, I was relieved. I knew it was horrible to lie to him, but my actions were for the greater good. Once I determined was no longer being pursued, I altered my direction towards the pass in the mountains. I may have slept most of the way to Raziel, but I remembered where the nearest gas station was. I could get a map there, and as a werewolf, my sense of direction was impeccable. With this fiery determination burning within me, it'd be there in a 10-hour drive was only an 8-hour run, as I could move faster than a car. It was difficult at times when the forest opened up to long, rolling plains. I knew I looked ridiculous, a massive wolf running with a bag attached to its back. When I scented humans, I would have to change direction to avoid them. Fortunately, most of the journey consisted of large expanses of land with no human settlements. Once I'd picked up the map, it was easy enough to choose the route with the least civilization. I could push my legs as fast as they would go without fear of someone seeing me. Then again, to humans I would just look like a silver blow whizzing by. A lot of my caution was likely in vain. I arrived at the city with a few hours to spare, my stomach aching with hunger. It only hunted briefly at the beginning of my journey. Rapid City, South Dakota. I felt a sense of déjà vu as I approached the fringes of the settlement, momentarily taking shelter behind a cluster of rocks to shift back. I was sure the kind people of South Dakota would accept a giant wolf into their city with open arms. The first gas station I came to, I obtained another map with some money stashed in my bag. After politely inquiring the gas station attendant for directions, I was directed towards the inn I had stayed at with Gabriel, because I would remember my way to Raziel from there. That felt like so long ago now. Gabriel's mouth on my bearskin. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm was especially vivid. I had to brush the side, focusing instead on my own stubborn determination. I couldn't get sentimental, at least not until I had my answers. My memory and perfect sense of direction served me well. It took longer than anticipated, but finally I recognized the drive leading up to Raziel's house. I was grateful that Gabriel and I had been having an awkward moment in the car, thus forcing me to stare out of the window the whole way to Raziel's dwelling. A faint smile tugged at my mouth as I walked towards Raziel's driveway, absently admiring the landscaping. The place looked as regal and imposing as ever. The angel opened the door after a brief knock, surprise etched on his chiseled features as electric blue eyes met mine. The shock quickly morphed into a grimace as he realized what exactly my presence entailed. As always, I was briefly distracted by the sheer beauty of Raziel's face, and I had to shake myself out of it. I faintly wondered if all angels were so perfect looking, and I concluded that it must have just been an innate trait of those with holy blood. Somehow, I knew you defined your way here, Raziel said, tone laced with resignation. I noticed his shocking eyes flicker to my neck, where Gabriel's mark was visible next to the straps of my tank top. Come in? I thanked him, feeling a burst of nervousness that I quickly quelled. Being in an angel's presence was daunting, but I had to remember why I was here. Raziel's shoulders were slightly hunched as he led me into the kitchen. I was absolutely positive that he did not want to see me, especially all by myself, but I had to make sure he knew that I had no choice. Gabriel told me he marked you. The angel muttered obstinately, rummaging around for a bit before putting some water on to boil to make tea. I leaned against the countertop, watching him. I tried to tell him that once he did, he'd stop at nothing to find him when he left. He clearly did not have enough faith in your stubborn streak. Why did he leave? I decided to cut right to the point. I know you contacted him last night, and afterwards I trailed off, feeling another pang of loneliness. What did you tell him? Raziel sighed, remaining silent, staring at the kettle on the stove for a moment before he snapped out of it and turned to face me. I don't think it would be wise to repeat it to you, Skylar. Why not? I demanded, trying my best not to sound petulant. Some things you are better off not knowing. Gabriel will take care of it. How do you know? Achius the only one that can. And I found some information that indicates he has an advantage. What advantage is that? You're very persistent, Raziel observed, dryness creeping into his tone. It always irritates Gabriel. Too, I said quietly, forcing the sadness away. But you have to understand why I need to know what you told him. I can't sleep. I can barely eat thinking about what could be happening to him. We mated, and the next morning he was just gone. He left me without a word, even with this new bond between us. I can't just let him go off without knowing what HE's getting himself into. And my wolf. She's so distraught I know. I felt my frustration rise to the surface. You're not a mated werewolf. How could you know? I demanded sharply, quickly snapping my mouth shut after I spoke. I hadn't meant to be rude, but the stress was getting to me. Raziel didn't look angry, though to my surprise, he just looked incredibly sad. I know better than most the power of a werewolf mating bond. He spoke so quietly I scarcely heard him. What do you mean? I stammered, momentarily caught off guard by his tone and expression. Raziel's lips twisted sardonically. It's stronger than any connection I've ever come across, and considerably more powerful than what humans are capable. A mating bond can even interfere with angelic power. I blinked at him, intrigued despite the fact that we were drifting off topic. Perhaps my mind just wanted to seize on something less painful to think about. Interfere with an angel's power, how? Raziel studied me keenly for a moment, his penetrating orbs making me fidget. He took a few steps forward until he stood on the other side of the counter. I felt my eyes drawn upwards until I was staring into his blues. Something about Raziel was mesmerizing. Hypnotic, his perfect look surged me to approach him, to reach up and touch his face, but I held back, My fingers twitched at my sides and I clenched my hands into fist. Bewildered, Raziel approached further until our faces were a foot apart. As I stared at the angel, Gabriel's face suddenly flickered into my mind's eye. His dark and tousled hair, his deep eyes. I felt a powerful surge of longing for my wayward mate. "Stop this," my wolf snarled, and instantly the spell was broken. I staggered a few steps backwards, staring up at Raziel accusingly. It was like he had cast an enchantment on me, and only my wolf had broken it. Raziel chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Now you know what I mean. Any human or unmated werewolf could never have broken through the allure of my physical charms. It's one of the angel's most potent abilities, and one of my only skills that hasn't completely faded. It serves to entrance any living, conscious being. But after living on Earth for a while, I learned the hard way that it will never work on a mated werewolf. When you looked at me, you saw Gabriel, didn't you?" I nodded and still felt a bit angry that Raziel had tried to manipulate me like that. But I was curious. "How did you learn that the hard way?" The sardonic expression was back on the angel's face. "Meeting Gabriel's grandmother taught me all about it." My eyes widened. I had never heard anything about Raziel's former love, the werewolf that had birthed Rebecca. Nobody seemed to mention her. I opened my mouth to question further after Raziel's cryptic remark, only to see that he had turned his back and was returning to the tea kettle. I couldn't see his expression, but judging by his posture he did not want to discuss it further. "So yes, I do understand why you are here and why you want to go after your mate. Still, I'm not sure that sharing information with you is the best option." "Why? Because it'll put me in danger?" "Yes, Gabriel would not want that." I huffed in frustration, drumming my fingers on the counter. I was silent for a couple of minutes as I tried to think of something. Anything that would reason with Raziel. I didn't want to anger him. But my wolf and I refused to concede until we gleaned at least one bit of useful information. After another moment, Raziel placed the steaming cup of tea in front of me. I thanked him politely but was still brainstorming. Slowly, a different tactic came to me. What if it was Gabriel's grandmother? The angel's gaze sharpened and found mine. I could tell he did not like the direction this was going. If she ran off and didn't tell you, and somebody you knew had information about where she was and what she was doing, wouldn't you do everything in your power to obtain it? I think you know the answer to that. I gestured impatiently. "So you understand how I'm feeling, being kept in the dark." He said nothing. "I understand Gabriel wants to keep me safe. I don't blame him, but it's my decision too. There are two wolves in this relationship, not one. Don't I get a choice about whether to place myself in danger or not? I'm a loner now. I can't let everyone make the decisions for me." Raziel closed his eyes and sighed. "Robbing you of your choices would be wrong. However, in your best interest, I should get to decide what is in my best interest. I'm not a child." The angel's jaw clenched as he pondered, and I knew it made a good point as soon as a shadow of resignation crossed his features. "If I tell you, you can't do anything rash. There are some things you won't like hearing, but if you insist I do, very well. We will go to the living room. I think it's a good idea for you to sit down." I did as he asked, clasping the mug of tea tightly in my hand. It was warm and soothing against my skin. I felt sweaty and dusty from my day, long trek, and knew I'd need to clean myself up before going anywhere else. Feeling guilty about possibly dirtying his furniture, I tentatively sat on the couch while Raziel leaned against the wall nearby. "I'm only going to tell you the basics. The first thing I learned is what I told Gabriel in the coffee shop." I nodded for him to continue. Raziel looked reluctant, but he resumed speaking. This piece of information presented both good and bad aspects. Basically, when Cain uses Gabriel's blood for the ritual, the book says that rituals of that nature will tie the drinker's life force to the provider. Put more simply, Cain's life will depend on Gabriel. The ritual won't kill Gabriel, but afterwards if Gabriel dies, Cain dies. I was sure my eyes were as round as saucers and my mouth hung open. Out of everything, I was not expecting that. This gives Gabriel an advantage. As you can imagine, Cain will not harm Gabriel. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Killing Gabriel would be Cain killing himself too. During the ritual, Cain will also link himself to his coven so that all of them can possess the sun, walking ability. However, if Gabriel dies, it will affect Cain and anyone linked to him, which happens to be an entire coven. I was attempting to put the pieces together. If Gabriel knew Cain cowled and hurt him, this should assure that Cain leaves your pack alone after the ritual. He won't want to risk angering Gabriel. His expression became grim, because if Gabriel feels that Cain is going to continue to be a threat, he must sacrifice himself. My heart stopped as I processed this. What? Gabriel is willing to give his own life if necessary, thereby killing Cain and entire coven, to keep you all safe. No, he can't, I replied breathlessly. I felt like my heart was being squeezed in a vice grip, and my wolf was whining pitifully at even the thought of our mate being gone, completely gone from our lives forever. That's a last resort, Skylar, Raziel said quietly, sensing my turmoil. Gabriel has a plan that will come before that. What's his plan? Well, before I tell you, you need to know the other information I found. This is a bit more complicated. Raziel stood up from the wall and began to slowly pace across the middle of the room. You see, there's 2 ways to conduct the ritual, and the effect on Cain will differ depending which method is used. Gabriel can either give his blood willingly, through a self-inflicted wound, or Cain can take it forcefully from him. Gabriel would never willingly do that, I responded, perplexed. Originally, no. You see, during the ritual, Cain will be incapacitated and weak. His entire clan too. The holy blood running through the system of a demon will not be pleasant. The book indicates that it'll take hours for Cain to recover, and in the meanwhile, he will be in extreme pain. It seems ideal for Gabriel to strike then, since Cain will be weak and Gabriel can kill him much more easily. As I explained before, Cain's coven is linked to him during the ritual. If Cain dies, they all die. Raziel stopped, turning to face me. The severity of Cain's incapacitation will vary. Like I said before, if Gabriel gives his blood willingly, Cain will suffer less. If Gabriel's blood is forcefully taken, Cain will be in agonizing pain for much longer. That's just how this ritual works. It's all about willing sacrifice. So he's probably already realized. Cain would much rather Gabriel sacrifice his blood willingly. I nodded, mind working overtime to see where Raziel was going with this. I found something in the book that I didn't quite understand. It spoke of a way that Cain could ease his pain during the period after the ritual. Ease it so that he never even suffers at all and he isn't vulnerable. Human blood wouldn't suffice, and more angel blood could kill him. Thereby, here are my speculations, and here is where you come in. I felt my heart rate increase again. How was I involved in this? Cain knows that Gabriel wouldn't willingly give his blood, so he has been searching for a way for years to find a cure for the incapacitation. He must have heard that there's a way to do it. Unfortunately for vampires, they can only process blood. But what if he could find a blood with natural healing properties, stronger than human blood? Healing proper, oh. The horrifying realization was dawning on me. But surely, I was wrong. Gabriel told me that Cain took your father's blood, and then came to you, displaying clear interest in your blood. Your father's comatose state activated your affinity, did it not? I nodded mutely. This seems too deliberate. He knew your affinity would awaken, and he craved it. Vampires have no such natural abilities. You see, they can't connect with the world around them and heal. No doubt Cain has been fascinated by werewolf pet doctors for years. When you came along, you were perfect, at least in his mind. Being Gabriel's mate only worsened things. How so? I managed to rasp out. When you mate, your essence is combined. You don't have angelic blood, but some of Gabriel's essence is within you. You are a werewolf, a lunar, with an affinity and an angel hybrid as a mate. Do you realize what this means? Skylar. I stared down at my hands, not trusting my voice. You are the perfect elixir for Cain's incapacitation. If Gabriel doesn't give his blood willingly, Cain will stop at absolutely nothing to obtain you to avoid the vulnerability during the ritual. His entire coven will be after you, and he has the ability to bend humans to his will, too. You would always be in danger. The ones you love would always be in danger. I bit my lip hard. It couldn't be true. It couldn't be my blood that would help Cain. The thought of him sinking his fangs into my neck, drinking from me to ease his suffering, was repugnant. So Gabriel has to offer his blood willingly. The ritual will be completed. Gabriel will not be harmed, and your pack will be left alone for fear of Gabriel's wrath. You will be left alone and unharmed. So why can't Gabriel just kill Cain before the ceremony? It seems more than likely that Cain has others watching you, and your loved ones, with the intent to kill if something happens to disrupt the ritual. Cain will make sure you suffer in some way or another. Gabriel is not going to risk that. So instead, just letting Cain get what he wants. Not exactly. Since Gabriel will volunteer his blood, Cain won't be in intense pain through the process. However, he will still be weaker than normal and more vulnerable as the angel blood courses to his system. As soon as Cain drinks the blood and links his life force to his coven, Gabriel will kill him. I felt my breath catch in my throat. What if he can't? I whispered weakly. You have so little faith in your mate. I shook my head hastily. It isn't that. I just don't like him being in danger, I replied shakily, trying to fight tears from rising. In the worst possible scenario, Gabriel will not be able to kill Cain. But Cain won't kill your mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Your pack will be safe from the vampires since they are tied to Gabriel. I wanted to lunge at Cain and rip his throat out. I wanted to kill him for using me as a scientific experiment, for forcing Gabriel to sacrifice his blood to allow those demons to walk in the sun where they didn't belong. Gabriel was all by himself, probably being held captive, and those disgusting creatures would now be able to terrorize everyone there. Wait, but the vampires will leave us alone. But what about the other werewolf packs? That is not your concern. You have to worry about your own pack. The angel replied calmly. There are few enough werewolves as it is. If Gabriel can't kill Cain, the vampires will go wipe all of them out except us. They'll continue to kill humans. 2 and more of them. There is no perfect solution to this problem. I gritted my teeth angrily. How can you say that? How is it okay to let others be killed just because they aren't part of our pack? There's nothing you can do. Skylar, Raziel replied, more intently. There has to be something. We can't let our own kind be slaughtered without warning. There is nothing you can do, Raziel said, and this time the anger was clearly discernible in his voice. I've learned everything I can about this ritual, and this is the best plan we can come up with. No. Horror was washing over me as I pictured hundreds of werewolves being hunted down and brutally killed by Cain and his coven. Cain was too strong for any of them. He was ruthless and power, hungry, and would not stop. My pack may not associate with others, but I still felt a fierce loyalty to my own kind. There has to be someone. I glanced around the room frantically, seeking out anything of help. My search was futile. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Nobody knew anything else about this ritual. Nobody had gotten close enough to Cain to. My breath caught in my throat. There was one person that knew, and she was lying immobile in a mausoleum. She was stuck in a coma, her wolf unable to emerge, leaving her in a half-alive state. Raziel had said he tried everything to wake her and nothing had worked. In that moment, I felt a wave of inspiration strike me. Call it instinct or some sort of sixth sense, but I would not ignore my intuition. I stood up hastily, causing Raziel to glance at me in surprise. Rebecca, I breathed. Raziel's expression transitioned into one of alarm. Skylar, What are you? But I was ignoring him, rushing through the house to get to the back door. I heard Raziel get up and make to follow me. You can't just. In following my instinct, I replied shortly, throwing the door open. My wolf was urging me on. Raziel made to stop me, but he did not have the speed of a werewolf, and I darted past him, heading towards the woods and picking up pace as I went. It was close to sunset, but I still had time. The woods fast approached as I ran in a blur of motion. Dimly, I heard Raziel's frustrated cry and knew he would follow, but he was a few minutes behind. Every fiber of my being told me that what I was about to do was at least worth a try. I dashed through the forest, weaving around the reaching tendrils of branches and narrowly avoiding the large rocks that dotted the forest path. Moving this quickly, it took next to no time for the mausoleum to be in sight. Memories swarmed through my mind as I recalled the last time I was here, but I brushed them off. Placing my hands on handle of the door to the tomb, I yanked it open with every ounce of werewolf might. With a grinding sound, the opening was exposed, my eyes immediately falling upon the sleeping figure within. I hurried inside, ignoring the clammy darkness that pressed in around me. I was caught off guard by Rebecca's beauty once again, because she was sleeping in the coffin without a lid. I could see every inch of her pale skin, her regal features. Gabriel's mother's lovely hair was a dark contrast against her pale skin, as it fanned out in curled tendrils behind her head. Rebecca looked incredibly peaceful, as if she had already passed into the afterlife, but my sensitive ears picked up on her slow breathing. I hurried forward, knowing my minutes were ticking away. This close, I felt nervousness prick at my insides. My stomach clenched as I observed her slumbering form. I felt like I was violating this room somehow, barging in without notice and without obtaining Raziel's permission. Desperate times called for desperate measures. I really had no clue what I was supposed to do. How did I know Raziel hadn't tried to wake her up using a packed doctor before? Furthermore, I had never even used my affinity. It seemed more than likely that I would fail miserably in my endeavor. I had to try. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It couldn't just be coincidence that I had an affinity and happened to be Rebecca's son's mate. Fate must have orchestrated this. It must have meant for me to come here. My wolf was still urging me on, instructing me to reach out and take Rebecca's hand. I complied, reaching over the side of the coffin and wrapping my fingers around her long, slender ones. Her hand was cool, but as soon as my skin made contact with hers, I felt a jolt of electricity shoot up my arm. Something came alive beneath my skin, a burning sensation that made the hairs on my arm stand on end. I breathed out heavily, unused to the sensation. It was as if part of me was coming alive, and I relished the feel of some strange power rushing through my veins. Instinctively, I closed my eyes. Behind the blackness of my closed eyelids, I could place all of my focus on our joined hands. Rebecca's fingers were still limp and lifeless, but the heated connection between us was like a living, breathing thing. I felt energy sparking around me, and I clenched her hand tighter in mine. What do? I whispered to my wolf. Call to her. See if she can hear you. Any other time it would have seemed strange, but my wolf's words resounded in my mind, and I knew that's what I had to do. Tentatively, I reached out a mental probe, trying to find Rebecca's consciousness. She was there. I could feel her, my mind brushing up against hers. It was only because of my affinity that I could sense her mental presence at all, and I momentarily felt a flicker of surprise. The edge of her mind was like a stone wall. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And I couldn't break through and mind, link with her like I could my own pack. That was to be expected. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. As she wasn't my direct family or a pack member, I decided to try to speak to her anyways. Rebecca, are you there? Can you hear me? There was no answer. I could feel her body's profound stillness, yet my affinity was still hovering at the surface, begging me to help her. Rebecca, I know your wolf is there somewhere. If she can hear me, tell her to follow my voice. I can help her. No movement. I reached out my other hand, stretching my fingers until I felt them brush against the smooth skin of her face. I cupped her cheek and tried again, speaking louder and trying to force my mind up against the barrier protecting hers. Rebecca, wake up. You and your wolf have to wake up. Just follow my voice. It was strange. I had no clue what else to say. For a split second, I thought I heard Rebecca's heart rhythm increase before it returned to normal. The energy was still rushing around underneath my skin, and an idea came to me. I concentrated on the feeling of power I had, taking a moment to wrap my mind around my new abilities, before I imagined the current of energy flowing from my body into Rebecca's. I thought about the sensation of the power draining from me into the places our skin connected, before sinking into her skin. For a moment, nothing new happened, but then I felt a noticeable decrease in the heat rushing through my body and the draining sensation became real. I sensed the energy ebbing away from me and I knew it had to be going into Rebecca. Gathering all of my mental strength, I tried again, my wolf's voice joining mine. Rebecca, wake up. Gabriel needs you. In an instant, I felt a wave of fatigue crash over me as the energy was drawn from my body at an alarming rate. Sweat began to bead on my forehead and my head was spinning with a rush of dizziness. I tried to keep our hands clasped, but I was growing weaker and weaker and my knees were beginning to shake. Every last bit of energy was being drained from my system. Stop, my wolf cried, just when I thought I was going to pass out. With a Herculean effort I wrenched my hands away from Rebecca and opened my eyes. Staggering backwards, I fell against the nearest wall, panting. My whole body was trembling. You only have limited energy. You overdid it, my wolf chastised, her voice sounding weaker than normal. I took a shaky breath and eyed Rebecca. Was I imagining the color in her cheeks skylar? Raziel's voice cut into my thoughts and I spun to face him. The angel did not look happy, and his piercing blue eyes were blazing. It was intimidating, to say the least, but I was too tired to move. I wondered how long he'd been standing there. I was trying to help. I panted quietly. I saw concern flicker in his orbs as he observed my feeble posture. I couldn't remember the last time it felt so devoid of strength. I told you, nothing can get through to her. Her wolf is too deep in a coma. I closed my eyes as waves of disappointment crashed over me. I had really thought I was supposed to do this, that it would work out somehow. I'm sorry. I should have listened to you, I replied quietly. My regret left a bitter taste in my mouth and I felt the hopelessness of the situation strike me once again. Raziel shook his head. I understand. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He trailed off, eyes flicking back to Rebecca's prone form. I was confused for a few heartbeats before I heard it. Her breathing was normal again, her heart rate too. Slowly, I turned my head, noticing Raziel's incredulous look from the corner of my eye. As my eyes fell upon the beauty's still face, I took a few steps forward. I stared intently at her closed eyelids, her cheeks, which were much pinker than they had been. Raziel and I were holding our breath, waiting for something. I felt my hands clasping the side of the coffin as I hoped and prayed that fate was on our side. That's when it happened. Rebecca's eyes opened.